Hello, Ji, Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to the Cover Drive podcast. We are finally back after a hiatus of, I think, about 5 months. Last हमने World T20 के दौरान किया था. Lots of commitments came up, school and work related between that time, so wasn't able to get to it. But I'm glad to restart the podcast, and we're going to restart it with a new format. And now you're not going to have to just listen to me rambling on for a good 30 minutes. You have two other people to listen to, which is always good. हमें एक वैरायटी ऑफ ओपिनियंस भी मिलेंगे. आज का हमारा जो फॉर्मेट इन वी हैव टू गेस्ट्स, two of my very dear friends from Twitter, from cricket Twitter. The first one being Kani Bhai, or some of you might know him as Salaar. He has been someone who has really supported me throughout my journey on cricket Twitter. जो मुझे शुरुआत मिली थी क्रिकेट स्पेसेस में इन्हीं के हाथों से मिली थी, जब ये को होस्ट होते थे मुझ जैसे मासूम 15 फॉलोअर वाले अकाउंट को माइक पकड़ाते थे वो. And I used to go off on my rants about why Shoaib Malik should not be in the T20 World Cup squad. Secondly, we have Harris, another very, very knowledgeable member of the cricket Twitter community. He has some very interesting takes, especially when it comes to fast bowling. मेरे और उनके काफी common views है, so that's been a big reason why we hit it off to begin with. Really good to have both of you on the show. And just before I pass off the mic to you guys, आज के सारा टॉपिक पे भी टच करते हैं. Obviously आज पाकिस्तान और ऑस्ट्रेलिया के बीच पहला वनडे इंटरनेशनल था. It was, to be very generous, a very shambolic performance from Pakistan. Australia winning it by 88 runs, batting first. Australia ने कुछ 313 for 7 किए थे अपने 50 overs में से, जिसमें the star of the show was clearly Travis Head, 101 of 72 balls. Travis Head playing his first ODI in 3.5 years. So let that sink in for a minute. In response, Pakistan 225 पे all out हो गए. We didn't even play the full 50 overs, which is kind of funny considering the whole point of our approach at times is that we want to bat out the 50 overs. We had one highlight in Imam ul Haq's century, which we will get into. But that being said, I'll stop talking. I will pass it off to Kani Bhai first and then to Harris. So I think, guys, we should probably start from a positives point of view. Negatives to bahut hone wale hain. So I think thode positives, let's get them out of the way, and then we can move on to some of the more critical stuff.
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल यार. सबसे पहले तो अस्सलाम वालेकुम सीडी. It's absolutely great to be back and talking to you, and I'm just really glad that the Cover Drive podcast is back. I really enjoyed the first couple of sessions we did in the World Cup. I understand life happens, and then time निकालना थोड़ा मुश्किल होता है, but I'm really glad you're putting some time into it. आज दिन I agree थोड़ा underwhelming था, but I guess we'll get into it. And assalamu alaikum to Harris as well. Harris, of course, a very passionate member of our cricket fraternity. So I'm really glad to be joining both of you today.
Yeah, no, thank you, CD, for having me on here, and thank you, Kani, for joining us. And yeah, today I think was a tough day for us, but I think, like you said, we have lots to talk about, and hopefully we can get into it a little more and try to dissect what went wrong.
Acha, so I guess the starting point is Babar won the toss and decided to put Australia in. How do you guys see that call? Like, for me personally, I get it that it was a relatively batting friendly attack, so you can understand why he made that decision. But I think a par score for this kind of surface would have been somewhere above 300. Like 315 was probably par for that surface. So I don't think Babar would have put him in if he wasn't confident with the idea of his team would be able to chase like 300 plus. You guys agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. वो तो एक factor आ जाता है, because if we look at it one way, Australia ने at one point they were on track for a lot more than 315, 350, 360 वाला scene लग रहा था. So I personally think the par score on this track might have been a bit higher than they ended up getting. क्योंकि हमारा approach, तो we'll get more into that we'll do a deeper dissection of that later on. But I think we restricted them to a reasonable total on this pitch. I think जो एक thought process होगा behind putting Australia into bat would have been they might have been expecting कि under lights आप Dew को देखेंगे, Dew factor might come into play, but it clearly didn't come into play a lot. What I think we mild side, because even the commentators kept pointing out that the Aussies aren't wiping the ball very often. Kyunki Gaddafi Stadium, apparently they've been using some new kind of spray to keep the dew away, and it's doing its job. So I think if that was the thought process, they need to rethink that, because clearly that's not going to pose an issue this series. Harris, what's your take on the toss?
Yeah, I think Kani, you're right. The toss, Bauer would have taken, batting first, chasing, so batting second. But I think what's important here is that you mentioned how much we restricted them to. I think what I noticed anyway, the first half of the batting inning for both teams was easier to bat, and as the innings, went on, it got a little harder. So maybe 300 was a good score. It was not 300 would not have been a simple chase. And as we saw in the Pakistani innings, towards the end, they did struggle because of plenty of reasons. But I think, CD, you're right. Definitely the dew factor. And I think maybe missing Shaheen not being there made, batting second easier. They said, we can probably, we have a little bit of inexperience in the bowling side with Zahid, without Shadab, without Shaheen. We can bowl first, and then we can get to the batting second, back themselves to chase a target, which they were not able to do. But that might have been the logic behind winning the toss and bowling first.
That's actually one way I haven't thought about it yet, but now that you say it, it makes a lot of sense कि आप ऐसे inexperienced bowling attack जहाँ पे जाहिद और वसीम जूनियर दोनों debut बना रहे हैं, would you really trust your bowlers to defend a total on, especially when under lights at the Gaddafi Stadium? So that, I think that might actually be the reason they would have gone ahead with it. खैर हमारी bowling की तो बात अभी आगे होनी है. While I struggle to find positives in this match, I think one very obvious one was कि chase में इमामुल हक, जिन पे बहुत ही सख्त लेवल की तनकीद हुई है, he came back with 100, and not a run a ball 100, not a 85 strike rate 100. He came up with a century that was above 100 strike rate, जो कि for someone like me who's been a vocal critic of Imams, it was a massive shut up call, and I'm glad he gave it. उन्होंने celebration भी ऐसा किया था, which was a bit divisive on Twitter, but I think it's all good fun. Let him have a yari if he's enjoying it. Let him do it.
CD, आप जो criticism की बात कर रहे हो, वो अभी भी हो रहा है. Just by the way, they're saying he played a little slow in certain passages, और उस पे तो खैर हम बात करेंगे. But आप जो कह रहे थे criticism होता आ रहा था, वो despite this 100 मैंने कहा mention कर दूं, अभी भी, at least for the little bit of spaces that I heard today, it's still happening.
देखिए अभी बात यही है ना, you can't please everyone. ये हमारी क्रिकेट फ्रेटर्निटी की एक बहुत ही अनफॉर्चुनेट चीज है कि कहीं ना कहीं से तनकीद तो आती ही है. While I do agree with some of that criticism के पावर प्ले में आज भी हमने देखा कि उस लेवल की एक एनफोर्सिंग इंटेंट के साथ नहीं खेला गया, बट उसमें I wouldn't fault इमाम alone. I think बाबर की उसमें इक्वल एक हाथ था. We are in terms of intent, obviously एक बहुत लंबा डिस्कशन होना है हमारा. But what did you guys like about Imam's innings? What do you guys think he did differently? Because for me, when I look at it, हम एक एरिया है इमाम के गेम की जिसको हमने काफी हाईलाइट किया था बिफोर द टेस्ट सीरीज, जो कि उसके स्ट्रगल्स थे अगेंस्ट द शॉर्ट बॉल. एंड I've been impressed by the way he's done it in the tests and even in today's ODI. He doesn't seem to be he doesn't look as uncomfortable as he used to once upon a time. उसने काफी इस चीज पे काम किया है.
Yeah,
absolutely, absolutely. Gigi Harris, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think you make a good point about the short ball. I think the thing about the short ball, I think we have to understand कि थोड़ा सी मेरा ख्याल है. I think first of all, Imam played absolutely beautifully today. I've been just like you, CD, a very vocal critic of him. So you have to applaud when someone who you've been a critic of does well. I think today's pitch kind of suited his style of play in a way कि जो आप short bowling की बात कर रहे हो, it allowed him time to play those shots. अगर थोड़ी सी faster pitch होती, he may have struggled on those, but you play in the conditions you're given, and he was given these conditions and he batted beautifully. I think another thing he did well was, I think which we know at the start of the power play, he does start slow, but in the middle overs, he was a little more aggressive today, and especially when Babar Azam was struggling, I think we saw Imam take Babar's role in a way, which a lot of people on Twitter were talking about as well. Babar is doing Imam's role, and Imam is doing Babar's role today. So that was a positive of today's inning. When he saw Babar struggling, he looked to take the mental a little bit, and he tried to be a little more aggressive. And yeah, this was, I think, Imam's one of better innings from Imam. And I think it's just sad that he was not able to finish it. But if he had a little more help, he may have gotten the job done.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Dekho, Imam pe, I think if we're gonna focus on positives, the biggest one for me today was, and this is something that's plagued Pakistan's middle order for a number of years. But anytime a wicket falls, automatically wo jo impetus hai, it starts to fall. And Imam took it upon himself today. Even Babar ki wicket ke baad, jab Saud Shakil out hua, Rizwan out hua, Iftihar aaya, he was struggling with a little bit, but to Imam's credit, he took that opportunity and he was trying to accelerate during those times. Ek phase tha on a partnership where his strike rate was over 140 for that 3 over period, which by Imam standards is obviously a massive, massive improvement. So uspe, I think we have to give him due credit. The only thing that I find a little concerning about Imam, and I 100% agree with the short ball point that CD made, and obviously Harris reiterated, but I just feel after the power play is over, because power play with the theek hai, to a certain extent, whether it's behind square, whether it's the pull, he can get those boundaries. But I just feel कि उसका जो attack है या जो release shot है, after the power play, it becomes a little predictable because वो release shot हमेशा down the track आके ही वो अपना जो pressure है उसको release करने की कोशिश करता है. And from a bowler's perspective, you can drag your length back because you can see him coming down. तो वो थोड़ा predictable हो जाता है. I've just, not to criticize Imam on a day like this, but I just think that's probably one of the core things. Leave the strike rate alone for a second. But I just think he needs to develop a couple of more release shots that don't necessarily involve him coming down the track, where he can use the crease or manipulate it in a way where he can accelerate from the crease itself. So wo ek thoda jo predictability hai, he'll be able to overcome that. That's just my take. But yeah, I mean, to credit Imam, absolutely fantastic innings today.
नहीं, you bring up a very valid point there because अगर मैं देखूं तो हम जब middle overs में struggle कर रहे थे, तो if you notice the line the Aussies were bowling to him was exactly that कि they were dragging it back, उसको पूरी body line पे ball कर रहे थे ताकि he even the like especially the spinners उसको ज्यादा मौके उन्होंने नहीं दिए to come down the track and attack because they know he likes it. तो range of shots में obviously गुंजाइश है. Hopefully जिस तरह से उसने अपने इंटेंट को थोड़ा इस मैच में improve किया, he'll continue to work on these areas, but I think that's a very valid area to point out in terms of things that could still use some work.
हाँ यार, and just sorry, say it's not specific to the spinners. Even seamers से मुझे बाज़ वक्त feel होता है कि उसका release shot वो it's always to come down the track. तो वो it just gives too many messages to the opposition. That's just my take. But sorry, Harris, go for it.
Yeah, no worries. I think the CD, Kani, you made a really good point. Imam, I think scoring runs for Imam has never been an issue. You know, we saw in his debut against Sri Lanka in the UAE, he scored 100. I think our frustration with Imam is that his limitations, he's not been able to outgrow them. You know, he's been a constant in the ODI team for about since 2017 now. So that's been about 4 years, and we still see, you know, he still has some of those limitations. So I think as fans, what we expect is, you know, for someone who's been given so much backing and someone who has who doesn't have too much trouble scoring runs, he has not been able to develop his scoring range a little bit, which as you highlighted, as we see, especially against the pace bowlers, after the power play, his go-to shot is like down the track where he goes and he tries to hit the bowlers over long on or long off. So it's just that our frustration comes from that fact where he's so comfortable scoring runs, but he's not been able to in the last 3-4 years develop his scoring range a little more, where he's able to up his strike rate in the middle overs a little bit, and that's where our frustration comes from, the fact that he's been struggling to do that. But yeah, today's inning was a positive, and hopefully, this can be a turn of the page for him, and we go on and see a different Imam, which we have not seen in the last years.
Definitely. And
yeah, I just realized that if I can probably talk about Imam for hours. It's just so much thought that comes to me when I look at Imam batting. And again, it's not to be too critical of him because he faces his fair share of criticism. But I just think back to, and I'm not sure if you guys remember this, there's a series that Pakistan played in England just before the World Cup, where Imam got 150 in one of the games. And we ended up at something like 355, 366, and England managed to chase that down in about 44 overs. Like, this is the game where Bairstow absolutely tore into Shaheen. But what I was trying to get at with Imam in that game, he was playing the likes of Tom Curran, like I think Chris Wokes, like decent England attack, probably not their full strength because Archer was missing and whatnot. But there were, towards the end of his innings, after he crossed 100, उसमें कुछ ऐसे shots थे where from the crease he was launching it over extra cover, और एक ऐसे confidence से वो bat कर रहा था that I had never seen Imam play on. फिर आपको feel होता है कि चलो maybe this pitch isn't entirely a pancake, वो भी एक point हो सकता है if England can chase 360 down in 40 odd overs. But yeah, I mean, I just think those are things I've never seen him do in the subcontinent or in Pakistan, where he attacks from the crease. वो spinner हो या pacer हो, he just made it a habit कि every time he comes under pressure, वो एक automatically एक, I don't know if it's instinctive, but he just has to come down the track, and that's his idea of a release.
100%. Or I think this is where I want to transition into my next bit about Imam. Do you guys think he is feeling the pressure of Abdullah Shafiq knocking at that door? क्योंकि देखें वो हम let's go as recently as a few months ago वो अपने इंटरव्यूज में कह रहा था मेरी स्ट्राइक रेट का मसला नहीं है, मैं 50 के एवरेज पे हूँ. But now you see a generational talent like Abdullah Shafiq come through the door. उसने टेस्ट क्रिकेट में already he's taken the world by storm. Now when we look at white ball, we've been crying out for an opener who can attack in the power play with Fakhar. Now again, I don't think the team think tank is relatively keen on that yet. Lekin, do you guys think it's going to be a factor playing on Imam's mind right now?
Yeah, CD, I think that's a really good point, and I absolutely think you're right on this one, because not only Abdullah Shafiq, I think we've talked a lot about Shan Masood, waiting his turn and being in the wing. So I think as a professional player in any sport, when you're playing for a spot, and when you're vying for a spot, there's others behind you who want that opportunity. So when you falter or when you give any one of those other players a chance, they want to take it. Just as you would in that position, you would be waiting for another person to give you that chance. So I think Imam, credit to him, he's continuing to, whenever he gets a ODI chance, he put up numbers. As I mentioned earlier, scoring runs for Imam has never been an issue. But as you mentioned, Abdullah Shafiq, we saw the way he batted in the test. We saw some of his performance in the PSL. He helped Lahore win the trophy. So I think absolutely that he knows the pressures on him. Obviously, Fakhr is irreplaceable in this ODI team. So he's the one. He's kind of from the openers the weaker spot, especially from our top three. If there is a weaker spot, it's Imam ul Haq. So he knows, if he gives any of those openers a chance, they're ready to take him. And they those other two openers, especially in Shan's case, they have the performance to take him. And especially the way Shan has his list A record, his performances in the PSL. So Imam, he knows he has to keep his game at 100%. And I think today's performance, we kind of saw in that as well. Okay, when he knows, Kani highlighted as well, when the other teammates around him were struggling a little bit, he decided to take on the mental. He decided to be a little more aggressive. He decided to be a little more proactive in his own limitations, which he has. He still decided to do that. I think that has to do with the fact that he has that pressure on him, where he, not pressure in a way, because we still know Bauer backs him a lot and the team management does back him, but he does know that there's others waiting their turn, and if he does fail to perform, they rightfully might get a chance.
Yeah, that's a great point. From where I look at it, squad depth, CD, you've been harping about it for months on end now. And I think after intent and approach, it's probably the most common used term in our cricketing fraternity. But for Imam specifically, from what I see of him, you can't acknowledge that a healthy competition is always great for the team, right? And it's great for us that we have options like Abdullah Shafiq, like Shan Masood, and hopefully Herrera later on, who are threatening to take that position, are showing you the potential to take that position. But मैंने जितनी Imam की body language follow की है, I think he एक तरह से एक sense of entitlement build हो गया, right? I mean, and again, ये आप इसको 100 तरीके से देख सकते हो. Some people will look at it as ego. Some people, there's numerous perspectives. But I just think when he's justifying his performance, right? He looks back at his career. He says, you know what? I've played almost 50 odd games. I have an average of 50, strike rate of 80. Could that be better? Maybe, but I'm content. And I think he feels secure in himself. तो मुझे उसमें वो edgy, वो nerviness नहीं नजर आती कि my position is under threat. I don't know if that's just being relayed through the kind of confidence that he has in Babar or vice versa. But yeah, and it's great. I mean, if at the back of his mind, if he's thinking, you know what, if I have a series of 8 or 10, 12 failures, then somebody like Abdullah and Shan is available to take my place. But yeah, I don't think he has that in him at this point. Maybe if he were to fail a couple of games, it'll become a little bit more obvious. But I think right now, just his body language for me feels very secure.
I think I just before you go, see, I think I wanted to add on to that. I think Kani, you made a really good point in terms of that he feels pretty secure because especially agar aap dekho, whenever he goes out to bat with the demeanor he goes and just whenever he does his interviews, he talks about his average and he talks about his that he's doing whatever he can for the team. But I think as a sports person in general, you should be going out with the mentality every day. You want to be better than what you were yesterday. And I think as Pakistani fans, that's what we, especially myself, I criticize Imam because of this. Because as I mentioned this earlier, we've seen him bat in the Pakistan setup for 4 or 5 years, and I haven't seen that much improvement for him, especially in his scoring range and his scoring shots. So that's where kind of I agree with you, where he seems maybe a little bit entitled or he seems secure in his spot. That where I don't know, and I'm absolutely wrong, of course, probably on that. I'm sure he goes in and he tries to improve every day, but I'm just saying in terms of the output we have seen on the field, especially his strike rate and his rotation of the strike, we've not seen that. So maybe you are right in that point where he does feel a little secure. But definitely, I think CD's point is correct. When we have generational talent like Abdullah Shafiq in the bench waiting for his chance, he does feel a little bit, Imam, whether he might not admit it, he may feel a little more, someone breathing down his neck that someone like Abdullah Shafiq is waiting for his turn, and I can't give him that chance because I may not get another chance. If I give him Abdullah a chance, I might not get another chance, especially with Fakhr the way he bats, to get another chance at opening.
CD, you can go on. I just have to say, at this rate, it might turn into a deep dive on Imam. You might have to title the episode that, but I think you want to review the rest of the ODI as well.
I was just going to move on from Imam. I think it warrants some discussion. Abhi positives ka section, I think it's primarily just Imam today, so negatives to both hain, so gotta give equal credence to both. Jahan tak main is issue pe, like my last point on this would be ke obviously after this match, agle 5 matches tak to I think Imam काफी secure होगा. अगर आज वो किसी तरह fail हुआ होता खुदा ना खास्ता, then I think we might have seen more debates coming up about Abdullah Shafiq, but I think for the time being, I agree with you guys. Security to hai uski jagah ki. But anyway, moving on to the rest of our positives. I mean, our bowling initially, I thought कि हम कोई positives के साथ निकलने नहीं वाले हैं, but उन्होंने एक अच्छा drag back किया था. यहाँ पे like if I have to like spotlight a few names, it would be Harris. Obviously, he was the pick of our bowlers. उसके यूसेज पे हम बाद में आएंगे जब हम नेगेटिव्स को कवर करेंगे. खुशदिल शाह, जायद महमूद. जायद started off a bit expensive, but he did cover up pretty well. तो what's your guys takes on the bowlers? कौन से bowlers ने आपको impress किया? क्या आपको कौन से ऐसे moments आपको लगे जहाँ पे I think we kind of turned it back around for ourselves, at least momentarily?
Yeah, I think on the bowling we had very few positives, but I think one of the few positives that was in our team was Harris Rowe. I think we saw, when even the opposition, the Australians were, batting with relatively ease, Harris Rowe was still troubling them, and we saw with the length he was bowling, he was bowling hard length. We've seen enough cricket in the last few years when a bowler with 140 clicks plus bowls the hard lengths, it's hard for batsmen to get him away for runs. And we saw, Harris was bowling. The others were going at an economy rate of 7, 8. Harris was bowling about 4, 4.5. So, credit to him. He bowled beautifully. And I think I'm just, like everyone else, I'm a huge supporter of Harris Rowe, especially because of the fact I tweeted about this too. That when he came into the team, there was so much discussion about him. There was so much people. There was so much slander on his name, and we fail to realize the fact that this man was playing table cricket for most of his life, and he was, in a span of few months, he was inducted from the table circuit to domestic, which he didn't even play, to Big Bash, to Pakistan's team, and that's a big jump to take. And of course, early on in his career, he was going to struggle, but we saw even from early on in his career, he had so much potential, and now it's just to finish on my point, it's just so positive to see that Harris Rowe, he's blossoming into this extremely talented and fearsome fast bowler, and I think it's a huge positive for Pakistan.
Hani Harris Rowe की जहाँ तक बात है, तो I remember when I was new on Twitter, this was around July, August of 2021. तो गिन चुन के मेरे अलावा 2 लोग होते थे स्पेसेस में जो हारिस रऊफ प्रोपेगेंडा कर रहे होते थे और बाकी स्पेस हमें गालियां दे रहा होता था. We've seen him receive a lot of titles per se, such as Tapia. That's one of the popular ones that goes around. But just to think about it, like in the space of a few months, Haris ने कितनी एक कितने haters को fans बना दिया. That just shows you कि the fact that you can go from tape ball cricket to the highest level of international cricket this quick, 2 years is nothing यार. मतलब 2 साल में आप कहाँ से कहाँ पहुंच गए, and he's holding his own. He is your premier death bowler. It's a wonderful story in my opinion, and long may it continue. और जहाँ Hardlands की बात थी, I think that was pretty spot on. आजकल काफी एक emphasis रहा है especially white ball cricket में कि भाई अभी वो यॉर्कर्स वाला जमाना चला गया. अभी आपको हार्ड लंस पे फोकस करना है. यॉर्कर्स आर ऑब्वियसली स्टिल वैल्यूएबल, बट द थिंग इज there's such a high chance of failure there. And on top of that, with the thickness and the size of bats today, आप एक हल्का सा मिस क्यू कर दो, even if the batsman doesn't get a clean connection, उसको एज भी मिल जाएगा ना, वो भी बाउंड्री तक कैरी हो जाता है आजकल. तो ये हार्ड लंस पे जिस तरह हारिस फोकस कर रहा है, एंड वन थिंग दैट रियली इम्प्रेस्ड मी was the way he changed up his pace. Change of pace जिस तरह से वो कर रहा है ना, that's I think one of the main positives. जो क्योंकि when he was struggling back in 2020 early 2021, एक हमें चीज दिख रही थी कि जब उसको मार पड़ती थी ना, he wouldn't change up the pace, he would just keep trying to go really fast, and it kind of got predictable at one point. But now he's using his express pace, but at the same time he's very smart with this when he changes it up. And I think he got 2 of his wickets today off the change of pace. I mean, he did get 2 wickets. That was a bit of a brain fade. But yeah, Kani bhai, what's your take on it?
Hi, yeah, absolutely. I think that's spot on. Credit is due where credit is due. Harris ka, I mean, if you go back, I would say about 12 months, probably one of the biggest criticisms of him where he used to get a little predictable, or if he took a little bit of tap, you could see in his body language how affected he was by it. I think you have to acknowledge cricketers grow and develop over a period of time. और Harris का जैसे आपने खुद ही कहा, because of his tape ball background, वो exposure मिलने में, उससे सीखने में, groom होने में, बहुत से लोगों का हाथ भी है, but obviously him going to Australia and his time with the Qalandars, and there's so many things you can look back at. But I just want to acknowledge that Harris is somebody now who realizes what he can extract out of the conditions, or he adjusts his pace accordingly. Variety भी आपने जैसे spot on, मतलब slower ball बहुत concerning था कि वो बहुत predictable हुआ करता था, and that's something that if you remember, was also said about Hasnain. But for Harris, like his slower balls come with well-directed bouncer, like you said, at the death he's executing the Yorkers really well. So very pleased with Harris here. Absolutely, he's our best bowler on show today, and has probably been one of our better bowlers in the last 6 months.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one more thing on Harris before I go on to, I want to talk about Khushal. I think Harris, Kani, you made a really good point. His overall repertoire has improved so much, you know, from when we saw him 1 year ago where he was just, you know, a Yorker or looked to bowl Yorkers, and from to now where, you know, in this World Cup, we saw him bowling change of pace. Today we saw him bowling change of pace to the, he doesn't mind bowling the bouncer. We saw in the World Cup against even India, he was bowling the bouncer to Kohli. He backs his bouncer, and, you know, he can bowl the slower bouncer as well. And then when he has to, he can hit the Yorker as well. And I think he understands now the importance of hard length. So I think I'm really impressed with the overall repertoire Harris has developed, and he's understanding his game day by day, and his game has improved exponentially. And we can see that on the field where he knows what balls he wants to bowl and how he needs to execute them. So that's my 2 cents on Harris.
नहीं, definitely ये जो जहाँ तक बात है हारिस की, I think we're all in sync over there. It'll be interesting to see how this bowling attack comes together when we have our full strength trio back. उस पे भी आगे जाके बातें होनी है. Next, I think Haris, you wanted to touch on Khusdil Shah, so I think we'll touch on him before we move on to the rest of the podcast. So yeah, please take it away.
Absolutely. I think Khusdil, you know, I was looking forward to see Khusdil bowl today anyway, especially because of his performance in the PSL. And I think those PSL performances continued today. I think Babar had to wait for Travis Head to get out before he, you know, gave Khusdil Shah the ball. But when Travis Head got out, Khusdil, you know, came on, and, you know, he held down one end beautifully. And I think even though he was not able to improvise, chip in a lot with the bat, but with the ball he was able to chip in a lot. And I think this is a really positive for Khusdil, because this takes his game to the next dimension. If he can, you know, start scoring runs consistently, which we know he can, hopefully, he can just be a next dimension player for Pakistan, because, you know, we know how destructive he can be with the bat. And now if he's a very good matchup bowler for especially righties, this can be, this can take his game to the next level, and this can benefit Pakistan's white ball resources tremendously. So I think I was impressed with Khushdil's first performance today. I want to see how he backs it up if he gives a chance. If he's given a chance, I don't know if he's going to be, continue if Shadab comes back or if they decide to play someone else. But if he's given a chance, I want to know how he does. And overall, I was very impressed with his line, his control, and his length. I think the biggest thing about Khushdil I noticed was his control, because since I've been following his career, I just thought he was a part-time bowler, but now he's looking a little more than a part-time bowler, where especially against his matchup, he can bowl a controlled length, and I was bowling to I was watching when he was bowling to Stoinis today, and he was actually kind of troubling Stoinis, and Stoinis was having a hard time getting him away. So that's just, I think, a positive for Khushdil, and hopefully he can continue on that and improve.
Ani, when I think about
Khushdil, sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry, Kani bhai, I was gonna come towards you next, but just before that, जहाँ तक खुशदिल की मैं बात देखता हूँ, तो I think there's been an immense improvement, obviously, over the last year or so. And I remember मैंने हैदर अजहर से भी ये सवाल पूछा था, and apparently Khushdil's been bowling like 10 overs, 20 overs in the nets ever since like he was in the squad for the World T20, और उससे पहले भी जब वो squad के साथ था, पाकिस्तान के साथ. तो हैदर ने बोला ये इस पे काफी टाइम से मेहनत हो रही है. And what intrigues me is how we're gonna shape up when Nawaz is back, because I can easily see us going with both Nawaz and Khushdil in the same 11, because दोनों बैटिंग भी कर सकते हैं, दोनों आपको लेफ्ट आर्म ऑप्शन भी देते हैं, और इंडिया में looking at the World Cup, that could be a huge asset to have two bowlers who can potentially provide that sixth bowling option. But enough of that. I think it would be unfair to talk about Khushdil Shah without going to our resident Multan Sultans fan. Kani bhai, please, mic is yours.
नहीं यार, I was just saying, जब आप first team और first choice की बात कर रहे थे ना, तो and I'm glad you brought Nawaz up, because I was just going to say कि शाहीन की और शादाब की extensively बात हुई, but I think in these conditions you'd find, अगर आप first choice 11 की बात करें ना, क्योंकि लोग तो obviously acknowledge कर रहे हैं कि ऑस्ट्रेलिया की B team and फलाना, but I think if you look at Pakistan's first choice 11 here, you'll have both Shadab and Nawaz in your playing 11, at least the way I see it. अगर ये injuries नहीं होती, and obviously there's certain things you can't control. So in that context, I think what Khushdil is able to execute with the ball is so important. देखो, हम PSL की बहुत extensively बात करते हैं, but you have to acknowledge that to do it for 4 over spell, उसमें भी आप the kind of astute captain Rizwan is, वो favorable matchups में Khushdil को लेके आता था, और बहुत ठीक है, we have to acknowledge कि Khushdil ने, there's been a tremendous amount of growth in his bowling and his confidence in his overall play and what he can, like what he expects of himself, right? ये आपके value added cricketers होते हैं जो they can provide value with the bat, pretty decent in the field, can do a job for you with the ball. Like in a situation where, let's say, one of your premier bowlers has a bad day or picks up a niggle or something, you need somebody who can give you those 6, 8, 10 overs if needed to cover for that. And Khushdil did it so economically, and he read the conditions perfectly. I think Khushdil was the single biggest reason today. हमने हारिस की बहुत बात की, between Australia getting to somewhere like 340, 345 versus where they ended up with today. So I think जितना आप Khushdil को credit देंगे to put the brakes on what could have been a mammoth total today, I think it's you have to admit that.
Lots of credit to Khushdil. हमने उसको पहली बार एक proper 10 over का spell करते हुए दिखाया, and he impressed pretty much all of us, and I think that's going to bode very well for Pakistan in the future. Khair, I think that's enough positives, क्योंकि at the end of the day हमें ये भी याद करना है कि हम किस तरह हारे हैं. So now on to the pessimistic section of this podcast, and this will get long, but don't worry, अगर आप YouTube पे सुन रहे होंगे तो I'm going to be breaking this down into sections, so it'll be easier for you to jump to the topics you guys want to listen to. To start off, I guess we should touch upon the team selection, the 11. किस तरह की thinking थी? मैं सबसे पहले, I guess I'll just give my own spiel about it, then I'll pass it on to you two to discuss it further. But there were a few shockers, that's for sure. When we think about Shadab being injured, the name that comes first to mind के कौन replacement लगी आएगा, सबके दिमाग में Usman Qadir आता है, because he's been with the squad before. And obviously we can't talk about Usman Qadir without the cheeky joke about the Babar Azam Dosti tax. But Babar ने एक बार फिर हमें गलत प्रूफ कर दिया कि भाई मैं सिर्फ दोस्तियों पे सिलेक्शंस नहीं करता हूँ. And he gave Zayed Mahmood his debut. I was impressed by his performance. I know वो शुरुआत में थोड़ा expensive गया था, but he came back pretty strong. Other than that, there were two other questionable decisions in terms of the selection as far as I'm concerned. Number one of those being Hassan Ali. He was persistent with yet again. Anyone who knows me, and I'm sure all the listeners do, क्योंकि आप सब मेरे ट्विटर फॉलोअर्स ही हैं, अभी तक हमारा क्लाउड उससे आप बाहर नहीं पहुंचा है. हसन अली का तो मैं काफी टाइम से एक सपोर्टर रहा हूँ, एंड आई हैव ऑलवेज बीन सेइंग सिंस द टी20 वर्ल्ड कप कि आप उसको बैक करें, बट अब उस टी20 वर्ल्ड कप को भी काफी टाइम हो गया है. Hassan still hasn't regained his rhythm. There's a certain extent you back a player. चलो अगर वो out of form है, आप उसको 5 गेम दे दो, आप उसको 10 गेम दे दो, मगर अभी it's getting to a point where I think it's doing more harm than good. Hassan, clearly you can see that it's just affecting his line and length, or there are some whispers about fitness issues, because when I look at him running in, it doesn't seem to be the same flow as it used to be, say in early and mid 2021 जब हसन काफी अच्छा खेल रहा था. Obviously I'm going to pass that over to you guys to discuss further, but before that, I think एक और जो decision काफी unpopular सा रहा था वो था सऊद शकील के साथ persist करना. Obviously it would be harsh on him to drop him after 3 games, लेकिन team combination wise it didn't make much sense to me, क्योंकि आप अपने top 5 में से 4 anchors को खिला रहे हैं, which is, I think personally it's pretty suicidal in 2022 in an ODI. Khair, that's enough from my side. I'll pass it on to Kani by first, and then uske baad Haris, obviously you can chip in as well.
अच्छा, just to address the elephant in the room, Hassan Ali की तो खैर बात की गई, but I think we need to speak about Shaheen before that. And the reason I say that, यार, अगर आप पिछले कोई 6 महीने उठा के देख लो, तो I think we've been extensively harping on about, and this is across our online cricket fraternity, कि शाहीन का जो वर्कलोड है वो मैनेज नहीं किया जा रहा. वो रनिंग हिम इनटू द ग्राउंड. आप ऑस्ट्रेलिया को देखें, उनका जो प्राइम अटैक है वो बायलैटरल्स में बाहर बैठता है, एंड फॉर देयर टेस्ट मैचेस एंड फॉर देयर बिग ओकेजन्स जो आईसीसी इवेंट्स होते हैं, दे ऑल कम टुगेदर एंड एवरीथिंग्स फाइन. आप शाहीन का वर्कलोड प्रॉपर्ली मैनेज करें. एंड ठीक है, टू पाकिस्तान, मतलब वी बीइंग अ लिटिल क्रिटिकल एट दैट स्टेज, कि शाहीन, मतलब इतनी बड़ी सीरीज थी, एंड ऑब्वियसली वर्ल्ड कप, एंड देन वी वेंट टू बांग्लादेश आफ्टर दैट, वेस्ट इंडीज, जस्ट एक्सटेंसिव अमाउंट ऑफ क्रिकेट. और इसके बाद भी आपको पता है कि शाहीन ने मिडिल सेक्स के लिए खेलने चला जाना है. उसके बाद श्रीलंका, एंड देन वेस्ट इंडीज ODIs, एंड देन it just we have England and New Zealand later on in the year. We have the T20 World Cup as well. So there's a fair amount of cricket to be played. The only reason I went off on the spiel is because I wanted to acknowledge कि हमने जो इतनी बात की workload manage करने की, आज जाके पाकिस्तान के उसी think tank ने, सकलैन मुश्ताक ने, बाबर ने, they followed through with it, right? For which I think you have to give them a little bit of credit.
Kani bhai,
and the reason
sorry to interject there, but I believe they didn't rest him by choice. वो actually injured था.
नहीं, ये initially rumor वो हुआ था, but from what I've just read, he could have played technically speaking. जैसे अभी second ODI में वो खेल लेगा तो कोई miraculous recovery वाली बात तो नहीं है, but they're just saying वो 100% नहीं था. He like 85% पे, जैसे for example Shadab when he played for Islamabad United with a groin injury, 100% fitness वो नहीं थी, but they just felt कि अगर आज वो खिला देते तो वो injury aggravate हो जाती, which is it's something that's happened before. Like I think a lot of our fast bowlers have played out their careers like that. लेकिन मुझे सिर्फ ये फील हुआ कि यार हसन अली को खिलाना, हम सब वॉइस कर रहे थे कि हसन अली आइडियली शुड बी रेस्टेड फॉर हिज ओन गुड. आप उसको बिठा दो बिकॉज उसका कॉन्फिडेंस काफी हद तक डेंट हो रहा है. बट आई थिंक बाबर ने उस नजर से देखा कि अगर शाहीन मेरे पास अवेलेबल नहीं है या शाहीन नहीं खेल रहा, तो हसन एंड शाहीन आर माई 2 मोस्ट सीनियर bowlers. So in the event that Shaheen's unavailable, I should feel Hassan Ali. I think that's the angle he looked at it, because Harris, yes, I mean, he's been doing fantastically, but him and Wasim Jr. for the international stage are comparatively inexperienced when you put it in terms of Shaheen and Hassan. So I think that's what kind of is the reason Hassan played today, because Shaheen was unavailable. But yeah, I mean, वो तो सऊद शकील वाले को तो आपने काफी अच्छी डिस्क्रिप्शन दे दी. सिर्फ हमें उस पर भी फील हो रहा है कि यार बड़ा एक्सटेंसिव डिस्कशन हुआ था कि इफ साउथ बैट्स एट 4, Rizwan फिर भी 5 पे आके accelerate कर सकता है. I just felt today if you're chasing a score of over 300, it probably did a little bit of a disservice to Saud as well. Because he didn't necessarily get the kind of time he would have needed to build an innings, and then obviously आपको पता है लोग कितनी जल्दी judgmental हो जाते हैं. But I think बाबर का जो mindset है सीधी, to me it feels like कि उसने ये decide किया हुआ है कि किसी player को मैं इस सेंस में ड्रॉप नहीं करूंगा कि उसको फील हो कि उसके साथ कोई ज्यादती की गई है, कि वो अभी आया है, उसने 2-3 गेम्स खेले हैं. सो आई डोंट थिंक ही टेक्स दैट हॉर्सेस फॉर कोर्सेज, या वो जो एक प्रैक्टिकल अप्रोच की हम बात करते हैं ना, कि कोई कंडीशन सूटेड नहीं है, या अगर आपके 3 अक्यूमुलेटर्स हैं तो आप एक को ना खिलाओ, आप एक जरा सा अग्रेसिव बैट्समैन खिला दो. आई जस्ट थिंक कि बाबर के माइंड में वो ज्यादती वाला एस्पेक्ट पहले आता है कि किसी एक प्लेयर को मैंने डेब्यू दे दिया है, उसको खिला दिया, तो अब उसको मैं 6-8 मिनिमम चांसेस दूं कि उसको फील हो कि यार आई गॉट एडुकेट अपॉर्चुनिटी, और फिर मुझसे परफॉर्म नहीं हुआ तो इवन ही कांट कंप्लेन दैट आई वाज लेफ्ट आउट. ये बस आई थिंक इज समथिंग दैट इज वी सीइंग अ लिटिल बिट इन बाबर्स कैप्टनसी. दैट्स जस्ट माय टेक ऑन द प्लेइंग 11.
So in terms of the captaincy, then I have like a follow-up question and I'll bounce this off Harris because I think वो इस पे थोड़ा comment अच्छा कर सकेगा. तो बात जहाँ तक आती है ज्यादती की, ऑब्वियसली पाकिस्तान में एक हिस्ट्री रही है कि हमने कुछ कुछ प्लेयर्स के साथ ऐसा किया है कि वी गिव देम अ डेब्यू, they'll fail and then we'll just discard them without giving them a fair run. But when I look at it, I look at the fact कि अगले वर्ल्ड कप तक हमारे कुछ आई थिंक 16 से 17 ओडीआईज होंगे मैक्सिमम. सो डू वी रियली हैव द टाइम कि अगर हमें क्लियरली एक डिफिशिएंसी दिख रही है, व्हेन आई लुक एट आवर टॉप 4 आई कैन क्लियरली सी कि देयर इज अ डिफिशिएंसी देयर कि आप अपने टॉप 5, नॉट इवन टॉप 4, टॉप 5 में से आपके 4 जो बैट्समैन हैं, इमाम, बाबर, सऊद, एंड आई वुड इवन काउंट रिजवान एज एन एंकर. I know Rizwan has that tendency to attack as well, but at the end of the day, he's still an anchor in my opinion. As far as I see it, obviously I can be wrong. तो आप जब 300 प्लस का टारगेट चेस कर रहे हैं with that top 5, I'm frankly not confident. And this is not a knock on Saud. Saud hasn't done anything wrong here, and like he's not done anything wrong. It's just at the end of the day कि उसकी जो abilities हैं वो इस टीम की बैलेंस में नहीं फिट हो रही हैं. इट्स लीडिंग टू अ वेरी कंजर्वेटिव लाइनअप जहाँ पे आप अक्यूमुलेटर्स को रख रहे हैं. एंड टुडे वी सॉ दैट सेम स्ट्रेटजी एक्सप्लोर इन आवर फेस कि जब आपका आस्किंग रेट कुछ 7 साढ़े 7 तक पहुंच चुका था, साउद आया. Obviously he didn't get a long run. Like he scored about let's look at the scorecard here. He scored 3 of 8 balls, which is okay. He was only out there for 8 balls. बट उसकी गेम नहीं है कि वो आके आपको वो इम्पेटस दे के आपका रन रेट ऊपर हो जाए. दैट्स जस्ट नॉट हिज गेम, एंड टू एक्सपेक्ट दैट फ्रॉम हिम, उसके साथ ज्यादती और टीम के साथ ज्यादती है. तो वुड इट नॉट बी फेयर टू से कि आपको, yes, Saud might feel hard done by, but sometimes when you're building those bigger teams, you have to make those tough decisions.
Yeah, I think CD, you make a really good point. I think it's not just about Saud Shakil. It's about overall, as you mentioned, Babar Azam's captaincy and the team management's values and ideals. I think every team management and captain's main responsibility should be to put their batsmen and bowlers, put their players in the best position to succeed. And simply, if today as fans, or today as people who watch the game, if we ask Babar Azam or Saklan, do you genuinely believe you're putting Saad Shakil in the best position to succeed in ODI cricket? The answer is going to be no. I think if they really believe him, they should at the absolute maximum, give him batting at 4. Even then, as you mentioned, that's not his best position, and because we have too many anchors. So just like you said today, today's game, especially white ball cricket, 50 over cricket, has 300 has become par. So when we have guys like Imam ul Haq, Babar Azam, and as you mentioned, Rizwan, who take the innings along, and who take the game towards the end, do we need a player like Saad Shakil who comes in and who plays a similar kind of role? And to be honest, we don't. I think we need a different type of batsman, who can come in and get going from ball one. And just that relates to my first point. I think we're doing injustice to Saad Shakil because we all agree he's a good player, but we're just putting him in a tough position where he likely won't succeed. And then we'll discard him and say oh, he wasn't good enough. No, that's not the answer. The answer is you're not putting him in a good position to succeed. So if you really do believe in him, either put him in a good position to succeed, or don't play him at all. And I think just moving on, I think I wanted to mention, I think we still are trying to replace Harris Sohail. We saw this in in the 2019 World Cup, before the series we had against Australia, we gave a debut to Saad Ali, who had similar stats as Saad Shakil in List A format, and we dropped him after 2 or 3 games, and now we're doing the same with Saad Shakil. And I just think, in my opinion, Harris was one of the best ODI batsmen we had in the last 4 or 5 years, and we're having a hard time replacing him. Harris used to come in at number 5, and he would get going a little easier. He would not struggle that much against the pace or with the spin bowling. And we saw in the World Cup, he practically helped us win 2 games, especially against South Africa and New Zealand. So that's one thing about Saad Shakil. The other I just want to go over the other players you mentioned quickly. I won't take too long. I think Zaid Mahmood, we did good by giving him a debut. I think he debuted in the T20s against South Africa, which happened last year, but then he was dropped. So he deserved another chance to come back, and I think he was not too bad. He was a little expensive early on, but he bounced back from that relatively well. I think Kani mentioned that we saw right away early on today, we missed Shaheen. We missed his control and the impetus that Shaheen gives us at the start of the inning. If Shaheen was not bowling, if Shaheen was bowling today, I don't think Travis Head would have been playing those square drives and cover drives with the ease he was doing today. So we definitely missed Shaheen. And I think one player you guys forgot to mention was who we played with the team management and the playing 11 was Mohammad Asim Jr. I think Shahnawaz Dahani should have played ahead of him, just because looking at the recent form and whether you look at PSL or the Pakistan Cup, I think Shahnawaz Dahani, especially in the Pakistan Cup, has been in better form. So he deserved that spot. And now, having played with Mohammad Asim Jr., you can't really drop him because it'll be unfair to drop him after 1 game. So I think they're going to have to give him the whole series. But I feel hard done for Shahnawaz Dahani because he definitely deserves a chance. And now if Shaheen comes back for Hassan, I don't know if he's going to get that chance, but he should definitely feel unlucky to be left out.
In terms of Shahnawaz Dahani, I think that's a very great point that you bring up. मेरा सवाल Dahani के मामले में ये है कि I think Tani Bhai would best answer this because he's been playing for Multan Sultans for 2 years now. I know he plays for T20s, but again, थोड़े skill sets आप cross करके आप apply कर सकते हैं. When I look at the Wasim Junior selection, I think it's more of a viewpoint कि Shaheen new ball के साथ bowl करता है, तो हम Wasim Junior को इसलिए select करें क्योंकि वो भी new ball के साथ करता है. And when I look at Dahani, I see him more as a middle overs specialist. Would that be about right, Kani Bhai? Or do you think he's capable of that new ball role?
Yeah, Dahani, जो आपने PSL की बात की ना, I think for ODI cricket, probably a better metric to measure it would be his Pakistan Cup performance. And ठीक है, Sindh ने in a couple of games they used him as the third seamer. He would operate in the middle overs, very similar to the kind of role that Multan gave him in the T20s as well. But I think Dahani does have the skill level to bowl with the new ball. Initially, when he comes onto the international stage, it's a whole different level of competitiveness. So you can expect कि शायद थोड़ा सा erratic हो, but it's very similar to what you're getting out of Wasim Jr. मुझे तो खैर थोड़ा हमारी जो batting depth के साथ जो obsession है, I think उसकी वजह से because we are missing 2 of our premier all-rounders, Shadab भी नहीं है और obviously Nawaz भी नहीं है, और today ठीक है, to a certain extent you can say Iftikhar 6 खेल रहा था, Khushdil 7. So do you really need any more batting depth there? But I think Pakistan का हमेशा से ये mindset रहा है कि what are you bringing to the table? And they felt कि Haris Rauf ठीक है, आपका specialist more or less bowler है. Hassan Ali can tonk it a little bit, but he's not an all-rounder by any stretch of the imagination. So I think they just felt that if needed, Wasim Jr. offers you a little bit more depth. But bowling-wise, though, if we're talking about a specific facet, I think Dahani offers a lot more for bowling than Wasim Jr. does at this stage. And that's not to be too critical of Wasim Jr. To be fair to him, उसकी भी अच्छी खासी pace है. ठीक है, आप this PSL के बाद से उसका थोड़ा confidence off हुआ है, and he hasn't been very impressive in the domestic situation scenario as well. But yeah, I just think यार Dahani brings a little bit more to the table, specifically for the role that we want to use him in.
I think those are some really good points. और वो batting depth वाली बात तो मैं agree करता हूँ. I know we have a bit of an obsession with that nowadays. And it is good to have batting depth, but at the end of the day, Wasim Junior की I think हमने batting को थोड़ा overestimate कर दिया है, which has placed some very unfair expectations on his shoulders. Because he can give you that pinch hitting, but I wouldn't classify him as an out and out all rounder as of yet. So with the topic on the bowlers, Hassan Ali, उस पे हमने already थोड़ा बहुत touch कर दिया था, but do you guys see him getting rested in the next game? And if so, do you think it's Tahani who comes in as a straight swap, or do you think Shaheen's gonna play if he's fit?
Yeah, I was gonna mention Hassan Ali, but I thought I was going on for too long, so I didn't. But I think I think Hassan Ali, you're right about the fact that CD. I think Babar probably wanted to keep Hassan because of his experience. But I think if especially considering the fact that we lost, I think they're gonna bring back Shaheen, and they probably will bring him in for Hassan Ali. He should definitely be rested. And as we've been saying, everyone has been saying, I was saying since the World Cup ended that he should be rested, not dropped. I think Pakistani fans have this misconception of a player being rested versus being dropped. I think Hassan is good enough. He's proved to be good enough that he doesn't need to be insecure of his spot, and we as fans don't need to criticize him too much. We need to understand that a player goes through phases, and if he's having a continuous bad form, we can give him a rest, and he can come back, and he can take over the position he was in at that. He can play at the high level he was playing at earlier. So I think Hassan Ali should definitely be rested, but for who, I think they're probably going to bring back Shane, just considering the fact that we lost today.
And at the end of the day, if I look at it in one way, Hassan, आपने जैसे वो point की ना कि we as fans we take that whole drop situation so seriously. I think Hassan is an ace bowler. He's one of the most senior I think he is the senior most bowler in your pace attack. So when he gets dropped, I don't understand why people are taking it as such an insult. देखें मैं भी उसको काफी back किया हूँ. Like I've been guilty of that whole let's back Hassan Ali, but to a certain extent, right? जैसे World T20 के दौरान जब वो out of form था, no one in their right mind wanted to play Wasim Jr. and throw him out there in front of the world in the World Cup semi-final. जब बिल्कुल उसने कुछ मुश्किल से कुछ 4-5 मैचेस टीम पाकिस्तान के लिए खेले थे. बट अभी आप बायलैटरल्स में अगर आप अपनी बेंच स्ट्रेंथ नहीं बनाएंगे तो आप कब बनाएंगे? बिकॉज कल को आप वर्ल्ड कप में चले गए, खुदा ना खास्ता शाहीन शाह अफरीदी को कुछ हो गया, लाइक knock on wood, I hope that never happens, like that, because that would be an absolute disaster. But let's say शाहीन अगर इंजर्ड हुआ, खुदा ना खास्ता हसन अली अगर खुदा ना खास्ता इंजर हो गया, और अगेन इफ वन ऑफ आवर बॉलर्स इज सिवियरली आउट ऑफ फॉर्म, डू वी हैव द बेंच स्ट्रेंथ to fall back on in that situation? आपकी बेंच स्ट्रेंथ अभी कौन है? अभी करंटली जिस तरह से आपकी वाइट बॉल की सेटअप है, उसमें you have Dhani, you have Wasim Jr. who are the backups right now, and I would argue Naseem Shah को भी होना चाहिए, and I would like someone to touch upon that as well, maybe perhaps right now, but आप इन लोगों को अगर अभी मौका नहीं देंगे बायलैटरल्स में तो आप कब देंगे? That's my entire point.
यार सीडी, सबसे पहले तो बहुत ही खौफनाक किस्म का सिनेरियो आपने पेंट किया है हमारे लिए यहाँ. I hope, like you said, we never have to go through anything like that. और शाहीन जैसे प्लेयर अगर इंजर हो जाए तो हमारे चांसेस और हमारे एम्बिशंस के साथ क्या होगा, you can only imagine. यार, I'll be honest, I know हम थोड़ा move on कर गए टॉपिक से, but I'm struggling a little bit to move on from Saud Shakil. CD, I know you've been a very vocal in your support for Saud Shakil, और अभी हारिस ने 2-3 बड़े जबरदस्त points किए थे. CD, you can leave this out later on if you want, but if you want, you can just add it to the Saud Shakil bit. I was curious because Haris mentioned Pakistan's not playing him in the best position for him to succeed, right? So, and I get it. I get the point कि भाई Imam है, Babar है, आपके पास 2 anchors हैं in that position. Even if he comes in at 4, you can argue he's in a little bit of being put to a little bit of a disadvantage. But yeah, and again, if we can agree to disagree on this, I think Saud Shakil का जो potential है, वो थोड़ा सा इस वक्त underrate किया जा रहा है. ठीक है, अभी उसका करियर स्ट्राइक रेट ओडीआईस का 63 का है, बट आई डोंट थिंक उसका अगर वो 4 पे अगर आपने उसको अक्रॉस डिफरेंट सिनेरियोज, डिफरेंट अपोनेंट्स, डिफरेंट कंडीशंस उसको 20 T20s दिए, तो आई एम प्रीटी श्योर सऊद शकील उस टाइप का बैट्समैन है, वो 4 पे खेलते वक्त अपना स्ट्राइक रेट समवेयर अराउंड 90-95 रख सकता है, which in most situations for Pakistan, whether you're building a platform, whether you're batting first, for a number 4 to be playing from the overs of, let's say, 20 to even up till the 35th over, if he can go 6, 7, 8 and over, वो boundary भी निकाल सकता है. I just think Saud Shakil की जो potential है, we're just not giving it enough credit. और थोड़ा सा it's a little upsetting कि यार इंग्लैंड में उसको alien conditions में 3 मैच खिलाए, अब he can't choose the fact कि इमाम ओपन कर रहा है, ठीक है, उसने तो बेचारे ने इतनी मुश्किल से अपनी अपॉर्चुनिटी का इंतजार किया है. तो sorry, I just, my heart didn't allow me to move on, and I did want to add a little bit about Saud Shakil, but yeah, if you guys want to talk about something else, that's fine. But I just think to be fair to Saud Shakil, ये mention करना थोड़ा जरूरी था कि यार एक प्लेयर को लाए हैं, सही है, conditions, everything I agree with. I even agree with the fact कि हैदर अली भी अगर आ जाए, he is a lot more flamboyant at 4, वो spin को अच्छा attack कर सकता है, all those points are valid. But अगर आप सऊद को ले ही आए हैं, आपने investment कर ही दी है, तो if you can see such a brilliant player in him, why not give him the platform कि भाई, you were giving you these 4, 5, 6, 7 games, whatever it is. Let's see what you can make of yourselves. And उस लड़के में है यार, वो कर सकता है. Just my take.
No.
CD Harris, if you want to add to it.
Yep, I'll come to you, Harris, but मैं जल्दी इस पे यही chip in कर दूं कि I agree with you, कानी भाई, कि देखें साउथ में there's no doubt कि उसमें white ball में talent है, but it's just the way we structure our whole innings. I think that's what's playing against him at the moment, right? अभी आप खुद सोचे कि हम आज कहाँ मैच हारे. We lost the match in the power play. हमने initiative power play में ही खो लिया था, where again, like I know we didn't play really slow today. हमने आज कुछ 50 odd बना दिए थे, but Aussies से compare करो तो we were failing a bit in comparison, right? And even in those 10 to overs 10 to 20, जिस तरह Aussies were still on the charge, उस वक्त हम काफी slow down हो चुके थे. So when I look at Saud, I totally agree. It would be harsh on him to drop him at this point. But if this is the type of game plan Team Pakistan wants to go with in the power plays, I just don't see any alternative at the moment. कि भाई आप साउथ के साथ ही आप ज्यादती करें ना, because देखें साउथ शकील has worked hard. He's come through age group cricket. He's come through domestic cricket, and he arguably got his chance quite late. बट बात यही आ जाती है कि वो हॉर्सेस फॉर कोर्सेज वाली जो बात होती है ना, कि आप जिस तरह से आप इस टीम को स्ट्रक्चर कर रहे हैं, आपको नंबर 4 पे एक ऐसा प्लेयर अभी चाहिए होगा जो कि इनिशिएटिव ले सके, वेदर दैट्स अ हैदर अली, वेदर दैट्स अ शताब खान. आउट ऑफ द बॉक्स अगर जाओ तो आजम भी डोमेस्टिक सिस्टम में बैठा हुआ है. बट अगेन these are hypotheticals that I'm putting out. What do you guys think is the solution? Let's assume right now कि सऊद शकील अगले 2 मैच खेलता है. What do you guys think is the solution going forward? Do we need to obviously this is not even a question. We do need to start taking more advantage of the power play. इसमें कोई दो राय नहीं है. But what can the rest of the batting line do, and what can Saud do to improve this?
Yeah, I think Kani, you made a good point, and I kind of highlighted this about Mohammad Wasim too. Especially if you give a young player a debut or a series, you give it to him for a reason, right? There's a thought process or understanding behind this that you think this guy can do a job for us in this position. So, like you said, we gave him a debut in England, and he had a tough series, and he got a 50 there too. So we absolutely got to give him this whole series. I think I have my doubts about him, not as a batsman, not how his ability in this white ball format. Considering the batting Imam and Babar do, and even Rizwan to an extent where they play anchors, I just think where those guys are doing their job, it's going to be hard for Saud to do his job. But we should give him the whole series, and then we should judge at the end of the series his performances and what the numbers he's put up. So we should absolutely not move on from him in a hurry, because we all agree, like I said, that he's a good enough batsman. I think CD, on the overall role, how you said what we can do, I just think that, as you mentioned, we have to be a little more proactive in the power play. We can't just be Fakhr Zaman or nothing. So we can't just be, okay, Fakhr is going to give us a good start, and if he doesn't, we're not going to do anything. We have to be a little more proactive, as we talked about Imam. I think today Imam batted with a strike rate of 70 in the power play, and I think if we're chasing a target of 310 or 312, even a strike rate of 70 in the power play is not enough. Maybe he needs to up it around 80, 85. And that's what we want to see from Imam. Take his game to the next level, that don't just, stay between 65 to 75, go up to 85, 90, at least at the minimum. And then Babar Azam, today, I won't give him too much, slack. That I think today was one of his uglier performances, even though he looked good doing it in patches, but he struggled. I think that had to do with the pitch, the ball not coming onto the bat as good, as easy as he would have liked. And as we talked about, as after the 10 overs, 15 overs, the batting got a little harder. But Babar Azam won't play like that every day. So I think Babar Azam and Imam can give a better start. Saud might come in a position where he might have to keep the run rate in check between 6, 6.5, 7. I think when the run rate goes above 7.5, 8, that's when Saad Shakil might struggle, because he may have to come in from ball one and absolutely get going. Where I think we don't want to be too much. We don't want to do too much injustice to him. That might be putting him in a hard position where he has to come in and bat with a run rate of 8, 8.5. So that would be putting him in a position where he may not succeed.
100%. And I think देखें इधर थोड़ा रूम होगा साउथ के पास भी improve करने का, because like strike rate उसको अपना improve करना होगा, and I think that's something he will be self-aware of. But again, it's a case of are you putting him in as a new player who's coming into the squad? Are you giving him that position where he can succeed, as Kani bhai pointed out? अभी अगर मैं हमारे power play strike rate को देखूं तो आज एक graphic काफी viral गया है, where if you look at the top 11 जो आपकी ODI की जो teams होती हैं, Pakistan is second last on the list in terms of power play average power play strike rates, run rates. Sorry, got my words mixed up there. हमसे ऊपर वेस्ट इंडीज और अफगानिस्तान आ जाते हैं marginally, but they're above us, and we're just a bit 0.06 above Zimbabwe, वरना वो भी कसर नहीं छोड़नी थी हमने, हम लोग बिल्कुल लास्ट आ जाते. देखिए, आई एम नॉट एक्सपेक्टिंग कि हम हर मैच में कुछ पावर प्ले में 65-70 रन मारे, बट एटलीस्ट इफ द ऑपोजिशन इज डूइंग इट, अगर ट्रेविस हेड आके 3-3.5 साल बाद मैच खेल के इतना अच्छा पावर प्ले खेल सकता है, then why can't our batsmen do that? I know Fakhar had a rare failure here, मगर फखर की भी एक गेम पावर प्ले वाली नहीं है. देखें, फखर और इमाम दोनों पावर प्ले में थोड़ा सेटल होने में टाइम लगाते हैं. दिस इज वेयर आवर मेन क्रिटिसिज्म ऑफ इमाम केम अप कि भाई फखर हैज द हायर सीलिंग. फखर पावर प्ले के बाद जो मिडिल ओवर्स में एक्सेलरेट करता है, दैट्स अनपैरेलल्ड इन पाकिस्तान, एंड इवन आई वुड से ही कैन इजीली अनपैरेलल्ड अक्रॉस क्रिकेट, जिस तरह से वो मिडिल ओवर्स को इतना कैपिटलाइज करता है. तो this is where a lot of us wanted Abdullah Shafiq to come in, but obviously abhi wo wala discussion karne ka fayda nahi hai, because Imam just scored a century, so we can forget about that for the next couple of games. In the long term, I do still hold that view unless he continues to play like this. But बात ये आपकी अप्रोच क्या आ जाती है ना, और बाबर की इनिंग्स की जो बात कर रहा था हारिस, I would be very critical of that, क्योंकि देखें आपने इतना ज्यादा बैटिंग डेप्थ आज खिलाया है. The fact that you're playing so slow, it means that you don't trust that batting depth. Now, if you as a captain do not trust a batting order that goes all the way down to, let's say, 7 तक आपकी बैटिंग जा रही है, और उसके बाद आपके पास हसन अली भी है जो पिंच हिटिंग कर देता है, और not even 7, if I'm not wrong, it goes all the way down to, okay, it does go down to 7. That's where Khusril Shah was. फिर हसन अली और वसीम जूनियर जो है वो दोनों भी थोड़ी बहुत पिंच हिटिंग कर लेते हैं. So if you can't trust that batting order, then what's the point of that batting depth? ये हमारा सेम डिस्कशन हमारा हमेशा T20s में होता है कि T20s में भी बाबर और रिजवान जो है वो दोनों थोड़ा उनको तेज होना पड़ेगा, स्पेशली बाबर का जो पावर प्ले स्ट्राइक रेट है. And Babar is a class player of one days. He's shown that ability to be able to play fast. So he needs to start doing that more often. Start trusting your middle order. अगर आप साउथ शकील को आपने नंबर 4 पे खिलाया है, you need to trust him to be able to take over the job. खुदा ना खास्ता अगर आप थोड़े इंटेंट के साथ खेल रहे हो and you get out, you need to trust the next guy who's coming in. तो ये जो आपका approach है, this isn't going to get us anywhere if it keeps going like this. Kani bhai, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, first off, I loved that Haris said the Babar looked good doing it. Honestly, when does Babar not look good, regardless of whatever strike rate or whatever score he ends up with? Yeah, I think Babar's innings today, not so much with regard to the batting depth we have. That's a whole different conversation. I think it's more to speak of the general approach that Pakistan takes in ODIs. And again, it's a funny thing to say, because this is probably the first ODI we've played in almost a year. और आधे लोग तो ODI खेलना कैसे है वो भूल गए थे. काफी हद तक आपको ये भी नजर आया कि the Pakistan team itself was playing a 50-over game after a while. तो वो इंजन को ऑयल होने में और रन होने में थोड़ा टाइम लगता है. I just thought कि Babar का approach is very in sync with what you see in Pakistan's domestic structure for list A cricket. कि भाई regardless of the total, आपने wickets in hand रखनी है. knock it about till the 35th, 36th over, 4, 5, 6 and over if needed. Itni koi, theek hai, if you get a boundary out of an over, that's fine. But I think in their mind, because of T20 cricket now exists, Babar believes, and again, this is just I'm trying to be objective and think what could possibly justify his decision or his decision making process in this situation. और मुझे थोड़ा सा फील हुआ कि he was telling Imam कि यार देखो अभी जो passage of play है ये एक relatively tougher passage of play है. There's certain nuances that we need to look at. Okay, we need to negotiate this passage of play, whether we do it at 4, 5, 6 and over. We need to keep wickets in hand because we have that depth available. अगर आखिरी 20 over में, let's say we get to the 30th over and we need even 165, 170, 175 in that situation with 6, 7, 8 wickets in hand, I back my team to pull that off, right? But जो उसमें कुछ चीजें इग्नोर हो जाती हैं when you start to look at it from a holistic perspective is कि भाई अगर आपका सेट बैट्समैन खत्म नहीं कर रहा है, if you're going to leave the job to a newer batsman to come in, और वही हमने आज देखा, बहुत ही रेयरली होता है कि कोई बैट्समैन आते के साथ ही लॉन्च कर सके. वो फिर अंधाधुन, you need a lot of luck for that to be able to execute that. हर कोई खैर डेविड विशे नहीं होता लाहौर कलंदर्स का. On average, you need 6, 8, 10 balls to get your eye in, to get a feel of if is it skidding on, is it moving, is there any movement off the surface. वो थोड़े nuances हैं जो आप उस वक्त factor in नहीं कर सकते. तो जो हम प्लेटफॉर्म बिल्ड करने की बात करते हैं ना, उसमें सारा इशू ये है कि इफ यू डोंट फॉलो थ्रू, right, if the set batsmen don't play through and get it to a point where the run rate is achievable, फिर आप एक suicide mission पे आ जाते हो. Because आपके pinch hitters भी हैं, वो भी अगर ऐसी पोजीशन में वॉक इन कर रहे हैं कि हर ओवर में आपका जो रिक्वायर्ड रन रेट है वो 0.5, 0.6 से ऊपर जा रहा है, 8 फिर 8.5 फिर 9, 9.5, तो obviously they feel hurried, right? Or when you can't get time, you look at what happened to Iftikhar today. Even Khushdal, you could tell itna comfortable nahi tha. Even he ended up with I think something like a 19 of 20, and wickets were falling left, right, and center. लेकिन थोड़ा सा जो approach है उसको if you look at it from a holistic angle, I think वो reconsider करने की जरूरत है कि भाई आपने मॉडर्न क्रिकेट अगर खेलनी है तो विकेट्स इन हैंड वाली अप्रोच चलेगी नहीं, regardless of, क्योंकि मुझे फील होता है, एनसीडी हारिस, यू कैन फील फ्री टू डिसएग्री विद दिस, मुझे ये फील होता है कि पाकिस्तान doesn't factor in कि if they're chasing 250, 275, 300, 325, 350, the target is irrelevant in their mind until it comes to the last 20 overs of the chase. शुरू में बस वो मेंटालिटी है कि आप उसको कंजर्वेटिव कह लें, आप उसको, बहुत से लोग बड़े बोल्ड वर्ड्स यूज करते हैं, बुज़दिल है, ये है, doesn't have confidence in your middle order. There's 100 different angles you can look at it at. But मुझे सिर्फ ये फील होता है कि they are stuck in a zone कि भाई हम wickets in hand will win you the game. And I just think cricket उससे बहुत आगे move on कर गई है. That's just my take on it. Thanks.
I totally agree with you, Kani भाई. वही हमें अप्रोच दिखी है. we were okay के चलो पहले रिक्वायर्ड रेट 7 तक पहुंचा तो वी वर लाइक चलो अभी भी अचीवेबल है, फिर 8 तक पहुंचा, फिर हम बोला ओके मे बी टाइम टू स्टार्ट पैनिकिंग, फिर उसके बाद 9 पे पहुंचा एंड वी वर लाइक भाई क्या कर रहे हो आप लोग. तो हमारा जो ये एज ओल्ड एक अप्रोच रहा है कि भाई टॉप 3 अगर है ना अपने विकेट्स बचा के रखे, बाकी की बैट्समैन है ना उनका काम है कि भाई वो चेस डाउन करे. तो मैं तो मजाक में पूछ रहा था हमारे ग्रुप चैट पे कि ना आज क्या बहाना देगा बाबर, तो वन ऑफ द गाइज रिस्पॉन्स विद हमने हमारे we didn't have the batsman who could chase down 220 overs, तो unfortunately नहीं हो सका. बाकी हम सबने से we tried our best. तो that kind of just sums up the mentality जो आपके you're getting from the top. And this is where I would like to move on to my final question before we call it a wrap. देखें, and again it wouldn't be a space or a podcast by me without Ramiz Raja slander casually sliding in at some point. तो हमने राजा जी की एक नई जो उन्होंने हमें एक
बिल्कुल यार, I was getting a little concerned कि अभी तक राजा साहब का कोई मेंशन नहीं आया था, तो I'm glad आपने खुद ही मेंशन कर दिया.
राजा साहब को खुद सुकून नहीं आएगा मुझसे सुने बगैर. तो उन्होंने हमें एक नया जो एक प्रोपेगेंडा बेचने की कोशिश की है ever since he's become chairman is that coaches are useless. मैं चाहता हूँ कि कैप्टन एम्पावर हो जैसे इमरान खान होते थे. एक तो हमारा, and this is the phase of the podcast where I'm going to get a bit into a rant, but हम एज अ क्रिकेटिंग नेशन कब रियलाइज करेंगे भाई के 90s खत्म हो चुके हैं? इमरान खान जैसा कैप्टन वापस नहीं आने वाला है। वो जो दौर था कप्तानों का, चाहे वो इमरान खान हो, उसके बाद वाली एराज में चले स्टीव वॉग जो आ गया था, देन इन द लैटर एराज यू हैड रिकी पॉन्टिंग, यू हैड एम एस धोनीज, यू हैड ऑल दीज काइंड्स ऑफ कैप्टन्स। क्रिकेट उस वक्त किस लेवल पे आपको डेटा अवेलेबल होता था, कैप्टन्स की जो नेचुरल गट इंस्टिंक्ट थी, वो जो उस वक्त बॉलिंग चेंजेस करते थे, स्टफ लाइक दैट, दैट यूज्ड टू बी द डिफरेंस। अभी जो डिफरेंसेस हो गई है ना, वो इतनी मार्जिनल हो गई है ना। दो हर टीम के पास डेटा की भरमार पड़ी हुई है, हर टीम के पास एनालिस्ट पड़ा हुआ है। आप एक स्ट्रैटेजी बनाएंगे, सामने वाली टीम के थिंक टैंक ने ऑलरेडी उस स्ट्रैटेजी को काउंटर करने के लिए एक दूसरी स्ट्रैटेजी बनाई होगी, और उसको काउंटर करने के लिए आपको एक और स्ट्रैटेजी बनानी पड़ती है। I've been reading this book, Hitting Against the Spin, जो कि नेथन लीमन और बेन जोन्स ने लिखी है. I haven't gotten too far into it yet, but pretty much the start of the book, it's a sort of a testimony by Owen Morgan, and he credits them. He credits the English think tank के भाई, they helped me become a better captain. इनके बगैर इन लोगों ने हमें जो एक असिस्टेंस दी थी, दिस वाज क्रूशियल इन अस बिकमिंग वर्ल्ड चैंपियंस, और दैट्स वेयर क्रिकेट हैज गॉन नाउ. देखें, बाबर एज अ कैप्टन, ही इज काइंड ऑफ लर्निंग ऑन द जॉब. And even if we keep that aside for a second, let's imagine Babar is the best captain in the world. Babar कोई इमरान खान के लेवल का कैप्टन है. Even with that, आज के क्रिकेट में आप खाली उस पर नहीं रिलाई कर सकते हैं. Babar needs to be leaning on the data. He needs a team analyst जो कि उसको बताए भाई ये मैचअप है, ये आपको करना है. And he needs a head coach, क्योंकि बाबर नेचुरली एक कंजर्वेटिव थिंकिंग वाला कैप्टन है. He always goes for the safe option. उसको डेटा कहेगा कि भाई आपको 4 पे आजम खान खिलाना है, वो बोलेगा नहीं भाई, शोएब भाई का एक्सपीरियंस है, उनको लेकर आ जाओ, वो हैंडल कर देंगे. एंड अगेन, कैजुअल शोएब मलिक फ्लैंडर, बिकॉज ऑब्वियसली दिस इज मी टॉकिंग. So um, on a more serious note, yeah, sorry, I'm gonna get back on a serious note. कि बाबर को एक ऐसा हेड कोच चाहिए था जो कि उसको पुश कर सके, हु कैन पुश हिज लिमिट्स, क्योंकि बाबर में खुद एज अ प्लेयर भी वो एबिलिटी है टू प्ले एक्सपेंसिव क्रिकेट. एज अ कैप्टन भी आई एम श्योर उसमें वो एक पुश अगर आप उसको दोगे, ही कैन गेट देयर. बट ऑन हिज ओन वी हैव सीन इट मल्टीपल टाइम्स, वेदर इट्स विद कराची किंग्स, वेदर इट्स विद पाकिस्तान, whether it's as a captain, whether it's as a batsman, वो naturally एक conservative shell में, he's happy, he doesn't want to get out of that, and he needs someone who can push him out of that. Saklan Mushtaq is not that guy. Like, Saklan Mushtaq के आप speeches सुनने, अभी उन्होंने एक आपको कॉन्सेप्ट दे दिया कि आई डोंट बिलीव इन सेकंड स्ट्रेंथ टीम्स. सीधा सीधा बोलते हैं, मैं रिस्क लेने के लिए रेडी नहीं हूँ. वी वांट टू प्ले इट सेफ, रिजल्ट ओरिएंटेड एनवायरनमेंट है. हम चाहते नहीं है कि हम प्लेयर्स बनाएं, हमें बस मैच जीतना है. हम ऑस्ट्रेलिया की सी टीम डी टीम हो, हमें हमारे मेन प्लेयर्स को खिलाना ही खिलाना है. आज चले आपने शदाब वगैरह को बिठा दिया था, बट लेट्स बी ऑनेस्ट, इफ दे weren't injured, they would all be in the 11. So sorry, that was a very drawn out rant, but I'll go to Haris first. What do you think? Where does this team management stand? अभी आई नो लोग सुनेंगे, और अगर हम लोग अगला मैच जीत जाएंगे तो सब आके मुझे सुनाना शुरू हो जाएंगे. बट regardless of how this series pans out, I think there's a serious problem that we're staring at.
Yeah, I think CD, you make a really good point, and in my belief, the team management and the ODI approach or our games approach go hand in hand. And I just want to go backtrack a little bit to that approach thing you talked about. So I would like, and Kani mentioned, like, I got confused today that what is our identity in ODI cricket? Like, what kind of cricket do we want to play? You know, because we see, you know, teams that follow the England brand of cricket, and England was able to win a World Cup, and even without the World Cup, you know, before the World Cup, the run and form they had, the performances they were able to put up, that teams are moving towards that template. You know, not aim for 400, 450, but look to play a positive intent cricket where you're not leaving everything for the end, as Kani mentioned earlier. Because I think, you know, I absolutely love all these players, but we talk about numbers. You know, we look at Imam's number, he averages 50, Fakhr averages 48, 49, Babar averages 57. But why are we not winning ODI games with this approach? If our top three averages score so heavily, we have Shaheen Shah. Why are we at number 7 or number 6, wherever we are in ODI cricket? Why are we not able to win games with this approach? So, or with this identity? So I think with this management and Babar's captaincy and approach, they all kind of go in hand. That is this the kind of approach that's going to give us sustainable success? What is the answer? Is this what we were looking for, or do we need to redefine our approach, or do we need to redefine our strategy? And I think And I wanted to talk about what Kani mentioned earlier before I'll come back to the current question that Kani was mentioning, was Babar Azam playing too slowly, or does he, or I think CD you mentioned, does he not trust the players? I think that has to do something with the 11 that was picked also, because I think we realized that, you know, guys like Iftikhar and Kush still have their limitations against spin, and maybe he was scared of the fact that if these guys come into bat too early, they won't be able to do that a job against spin, and which we saw, you know, Iftikhar struggle against spin, and then even Khoshtal, he looked a little better, but he was struggling against spin. I think in today's game, I expected a little more from Rizwan and Saad Shakil, which they were not able to do, and then that's why Iftikhar and Khoshtal had to, you know, come in earlier, and they were not able to put the results that we had hoped for. But I think, yeah, you're absolutely right that we need a coach, you know, who understands modern day cricket a little more, and who's able to push these players to the limits, and as well as I mentioned, putting players in a position to succeed. So I think if you talk about these modern day coaches, would they be happy with the fact that, again, I completely agree with you, Kani. I'm not against Saad Shakil. Would they be happy to play someone like Saad Shakil at number 5? I think most coaches may not agree with that. They might say, you know what, that's not a good idea. We may need to, especially with our top 4, we may need to move towards someone who's a little more dynamic, who can get going from ball 1. So I think we need to get away from this approach. And, you know, we've seen Multan Sultan in the PSL succeed with new modern day approach, with new you know, data, and with new coaches, were not new but old coaches who've gone towards data, who understand the game has changed, how the game has evolved, and they're happy to make those changes. So and you made a good point about you know, Babar Azam not trusting someone like Azam Khan and going with someone like Shoaib Malik, where is he willing to do that? Is he willing to take the risk to, you know, earn the rewards? So Babar Azam has to evolve a little bit as a captain as well. You know, he's amazing as a batsman, but we hope that he continues to grow as a captain, and, you know, he learns from these mistakes, and he understands that, you know, the game is changing. We have to look ahead, and we have to, you know, change our identity a little bit to win games. Because what we need to understand first is that we have to understand there's a problem. Once we realize there's a problem, we can look towards going on to solving it. So I agree. Just ending it. I think I agree with you. Saklan Mushtaq maybe not be the best option. I want to give him a little more time, because I was honestly pretty impressed with him at the World Cup. But I think you highlighted the fact that maybe it was the early stages, it was the honeymoon period. But now when we're moving on to the latter part. It's not going as well as we had hoped, but I want to see what he does. But maybe we do need someone who, you know, who's a little more, you know, data oriented, who can, you know, be a little driven on Babar Azam about the fact that this is the players we need. If this is a system you want to play with Imam and Fakhr and yourself batting, you know, 30, 35 overs, we need these kind of players, you know, who can win us these games, and we need to put these players in those positions to win. So I think we do definitely need to reevaluate our approach and identify what we want to go towards in ODI cricket.
Yeah, I really like the identity point that Harris made there. I think that if we can answer that as a cricket team, I think we'll go a long way in fixing any issues we may or may not have. Jahan tak Saklan Mushtaq ki baat hai, CD, it's a very interesting topic because yaar, game sari power dynamic ki hai. If you go back to Misbah ul Haq, the all-powerful Misbah ul Haq, was previously both chief selector and head coach, and then just head coach after that. काफी हद तक फील होता था कि he was dictating terms to Babar, और Babar is very new captain, तो bowling plan से लेके even batting order में changes, playing 11, Misbah was like sort of putting his foot down and didn't necessarily give Babar the freedom to express himself, for the lack of a better way of saying it. I think we all agree that Saklan is a little bit more laid back in that sense. He allows Babar to express himself. He acknowledges this is Babar's team, it's Babar's era, and he wants Babar to, show his authority. So tactical point of view se theek hai, there are certain things that I was listening to people today, and again, I like to be objective. I don't want to be too critical, but people are saying we've reduced Saklan essentially to somewhat of a motivational speaker. And from where I'm sitting, yaar, dekho, we've given him a 12-month contract at this point. ये वही Saklan Mushtaq है when जब वो World Cup के लिए emergency सिनेरियो में लेके आए थे. तो I was telling myself कि यार देखो Saklan is different because ये इंग्लैंड के वर्ल्ड कप विनिंग स्क्वाड में था. He understands what modern cricket is. He understands those nuances of the game, which are not necessarily things you would get out of a Misbah ul Haq or a Waqar Yunus, because he's had that exposure. ठीक है, he's worked with numerous international teams, England, New Zealand, West Indies, Bangladesh. So he understands different conditions, different approaches. So he will allow Pakistan to express themselves. Or kuch had tak theek hai, we've had a couple of bad results. So certain things are being highlighted a little bit more than they would be otherwise. But just for from Babar's perspective, I think Saklan is the kind of coach that gives him the freedom to express himself. और ठीक है, अभी बाबर टैक्टिकल बहुत एरर्स कर रहा है. हमने टेस्ट मैचेस में देख रहे हैं कि रिवर्स स्विंग हो रही है तो स्पिनर्स को लगाया जा रहा है. ओडीआई में आपका prime bowlers अपना कोटा पूरा नहीं कर रहा. There are numerous things that you can pinpoint, right? But I like to be positive. So I'm telling myself कि यार these are things Babal will learn from. वो इन conditions को acknowledge करेगा, अपनी batting order को acknowledge करेगा. With time, he'll realize कि यार if I want to be a successful captain, these are things that I cannot allow, right? And I think Saklan, in that sense, is a good foil to be the supportive act and not somebody necessarily who demands authority from Babar. I would say, delegates authority to Babar. Right. I think Saklan gives you that perspective. And I say this only because, look, he's a 12-month contract now. So अब वो investment कर दिया, back करना पड़ेगा. And it's not like we can end up with an Andy Flower overnight. So बंदा कर ही क्या सकता है. But CD, I just wanted to say it's been an enjoyable session here. I'm really glad the Cover Drive podcast is back, and hopefully we can have, you'll come up with a lot more sessions in the future.
Nahi, it's been fantastic having both of you on, yaar. Much better and much easier to bounce off two people rather than keep talking to myself. Okay, at one point you run out of your train of thought. On that point, I think this is a good note to end on. Lots of interesting points. I think हमने काफी चीजों को कवर कर दिया, चाहे वो टीम के अप्रोच हो, टीम मैनेजमेंट को आगे जाते हुए कैसे देख रहे हैं हम लोग. बाबर की कैप्टनसी हो गई. इंशाल्लाह सेकंड ओडीआई में हमें कुछ इम्प्रूवमेंट दिखेगी बॉयज से. And let's try to have another. I cannot promise that yet, but उम्मीद है कि उसके बाद भी एक ऐसा एक podcast करेंगे, and going to be trying to do these more often. Thank you so much, Harris. Thank you, Kenny, for coming on. Thank you to all the listeners. Please subscribe to the channel. Follow me on Twitter at Cover Drive Trick. I'll be linking those down in the bio. And we will see you all very soon. Take care and Allah Hafiz.